My next guest has been with us quite frequently. He's a remarkable gentleman. He's a leading anthropologist and the author of over 35 books on related subjects. And his latest book is called Frontiers of Anthropology, which is a survey of 200 years of research on the nature and accomplishments of man. It's fascinating. Would you welcome Ashely Montagu? I haven't plugged through this book yet, but I'm going to, because it sounds fascinating. Have we made any great strides in 200 years, or are we headed in bad directions?
Oh, well,
You seem to be a little pessimistic many times on...
Well, the only philosophically tenable position for a pessimist like myself, as I think I've explained to you before, is optimism.
Right. Now, you say in this book, there's one subject I want to get into, and that's something there's something about you explaining. You're talking about what is known as voodoo death.
Yes, yes, that's fascinating.
In which people die from no physical or problems or ailments.
Yes. It occurs in many different so-called primitive societies where a man breaks a taboo, for example, eats off a plate which only the chief is allowed to eat off. And
are you talking about like Tahiti and countries?
Yes, Australian Aborigines throughout a great part of Africa, New Guinea and so forth. And it automatically follows that if you break this kind of taboo, you will die. And since everyone believes this, a man has been known to lie down and die within 3 days from nothing else but his belief in the fact that he is going to die. And most people who hear about this for the first time simply won't believe it.
Well, it's hard to believe, because what ceases to function? You mean just the breathing and everything? Or?
But now we understand the physiology of this and how it works. And what happens is the man believes in his upper story, and it goes down into the brain, in the middle of his brain, at the end of which there is this pea-like body called the pituitary gland, which secretes hormones, which immediately act upon the glands situated in the top of the kidneys, the adrenal glands, to secrete a great deal of cortisone. Mm-hmm. And this starts up a reaction in which the circulation is slowed down. So that two things happen. One, the oxygen that's carried on the red blood cells is reduced, so he doesn't get enough oxygen. And two, the red blood cells begin to stick, to agglutinate together. And the result of all this is that he actually drowns in his own fluids because his membranes become permeable and the circulation slows down to the point where he doesn't get enough oxygen, and he dies literally of shock.
So physical impairments take place, but all because of the mental attitude.
Yes. And the only person who can cure him is the kind of person who he believes has the formula which can do the trick. No one else can do this. No one can prescribe drugs. The most effective authorities in this subject are being absolutely stymied, but in comes this medicine man, and he goes through his abracadabra, and up gets this man who is absolutely moribund and walks right out.
Because he's removed the fear.
Absolutely, yes.
Have there been known cases people have died of outright fear? Not from
yes, not only in so-called primitive cultures, but in our own society, with lots of cases on record.
In other words, something that's so shocking to the system that nothing physical
and shocking is the word.
Right.
Because the physiology of this is akin to the shock that a person experiences after massive burns, and also by being struck by a bullet.
Right. Is this, when you're talking about the voodoo, is that the same thing that happens when they say they put a hex in some of these societies, where they, with the doll, with the fear that he can actually accomplish this?
Yes, it's identically the same sort
of thing. And says in 5 days or 6 days you will... Mm-hmm. It's just firmly the belief in that.
Yes. All this proves that...
Is modern medicine able to take advantage of some of these...
Well, modern medicine is very slow.
And turn it around,
you can send a message around the world now in about 1/7 of a second. It takes about 50 years to get a message into the average medical mind. It's a very conservative instrument, so...
Yeah. What do you think of now, acupuncture, as we've discussed on the show with other people, and many doctors over here have been reluctant to accept it. I don't know why.
They've been using it,
and they've been using it in the Orient for 4,000, 5,000 years.
Now, that's a very exciting subject. You see, one of the things that's been generally overlooked is that the areas in which acupuncture is practiced are culturally very different from our own. So that what, for example, these people may believe, it may be very difficult for us to believe. So when you stick needles into ourselves, they may in fact hurt. Whereas in another culture, where you firmly believe in this method, they won't hurt, and they will do the trick. But clearly there is something there, but none of us knows anything about it.
Yeah, it is very strange. I've seen them do it, and there is no blood, and whatsoever, which is strange to understand that you can put a needle in somebody without having, even if you prick yourself with a pin, you have blood. But when they put these needles in, there's absolutely no blood whatsoever. And they remove them, and there's no evidence that they've even been in the body. So there has to be something to it.
Well, of course, you can control the flow of your blood if you've learned how to do this. And of course, Eastern yogis and others can do this, and have been buried, for example, alive.
They can change their rate of breathing.
Exactly. And anyone can learn to do this who practice it long enough. You can reduce your blood pressure. Not everyone. Let me withdraw that. There are some people who are in very seriously bad states. Can't do this. But most people could. And most people could do what we call meditation. Actually, what it is relaxation. And you can, for example, cut down on the rate of living, which kills more people than any other disorder in America, by simply doing very simple exercises, by sitting down, or even when you're walking down the street, saying to yourself, relaxation is wonderful, it's the natural way to ease and calm, this organ, that organ, these parts of my body, etc., feel relaxed.
It's like auto-hypnosis, then?
Yes, exactly.
What do you attribute the rebirth or the interest in the occult lately? Mysticism and various fringe groups?
Yeah, that is related also, I believe, to the drug cult. The one is the resort to material devices like pills, uppers, downers, and whatnot, etc., and various other more vicious drugs. And the other is a resort to ideas, which both have the same function, and that is to make life less painful for you, to make reality, which you are unable to face, less painful for you, in that you are able to retire into another world, and which is completely mysterious. This is why books like Castaneda's books, these things that sell in hundreds of thousands, where conversations with Indians allegedly give you insights into the way in which other kinds of minds work, in which you can adapt for your own purpose, sell in such enormous quantities. But the fact is, this is a flight from reality, and it is an extremely dangerous one. It prepares the soil for the kind of atmosphere that Hitler took such great advantage of in Germany, where enormous numbers of people sort of escaped from freedom. Freedom and responsibility is too much for most people to face. Most people can't accept it, and they'd rather join a group from which, in their own weakness, they can derive their strengths.
No matter how weird it may be, like Satanism or any of those cults.
People talk about the credulity of earlier ages. There is no age that has been more credulous than the one in which we are now living.
I suppose what anthropologists look back 200 years from now on.
You are indeed an optimist. 200 years.
I assume. I would like to think that we're going to be around for 200 years, although there are a lot of people who don't
I hope you're
think
right.
that man is going to be around for 200 years. Did you share that particular belief?
Well, I think it's highly improbable that people are going to be around the next 200 years unless they do something about it. And not many are doing anything about it.
It means controlling the population or distributing the material goods in the world a little more equitably.
Unless, of course, we solve the population problem, we won't solve any other problem.
Some countries are against that. Brazil, for example, wants more people because they say they've got a vast land over there and they're all concentrated in the cities. They want more people.
Yes, there are lots of Americans who believe that America is underpopulated. They don't realize that over 75% of Americans live in cities, in a very few cities, and that these are terribly overpopulated, and that when you exceed a certain size, it's quite impossible to manage the variables in it. It becomes unmanageable, unlivable, and ungovernable.
Ashely, I thank you for being with us again. I hope you join us whenever you would like to. It's always fascinating. David, thank you, and Lawrence, thanks for being with us. Peter Falk left me a note. He says, sometimes I leave before I make all my points. I mean, I have other things to say, but then I come back and say them. But this time I can't come back, but I want to say them. He wants to thank Bob Conrad for a terrific performance and Bernie Kulowski. He forgot to mention the director on that first episode. Hey, what is he? Is this for me? I'd like to know where Mr. Carson bought that jacket. I'd also like to know what he paid for it. I hear he has an inn. I'm humbled by that applause.